We got to get started with all of the big news in the coaching carousel, and who's got it better than the Los Angeles Chargers, Michael? Jim Harbaugh, official head coach in L.A.
Well, look, I'm biased. I love the guy. I think he's been remarkable, from the time I told him not to take the University of San Diego job, and he did it anyway, and he won. And then he went to Stanford and won, and then he went to 49ers and 71% winning percentage, and then he went to Michigan and restored their program. So, look, this is a great hire. No way around it. I mean, he's a team builder. I think a lot of times people get a little confused because Harbaugh played quarterback in the NFL. They think he's going to be a play caller, and he's going to be, run the offense, and he's going to be one of those tacticians. No, he's a team builder, a culture builder, and a strategist. Mm-hmm. Loves game management. He used to talk to Al Davis about it constantly, wanted to know about situational football, how to handle this. I'd walk by him in the hall, and he would say, what do you think about what would you do here or what would you do there? And that's just how his mind works, right? And so they're going to get tougher. They're going to get tougher mentally and physically. And this is going to be the best thing that happened to a very good quarterback. We are no longer going to be questioning Justin Herbert's ability. We're going to be talking about how do we slow him down. And this is a great hire because, look, let's face it. You got Andy Reid, you got Sean Payton, and now you got Harbaugh. Mm-hmm. This is reminiscent to me when the NFC East had Bill Parcells, Tom Landry, or Jimmy Johnson, however you want to slice it, Buddy Ryan and Joe Gibbs. And that's when football was good.
And the two big things that I'm taking away from what you're saying there, Michael, are Jim Harbaugh's ability to build a team and win, and now putting that together with a guy like Justin Herbert, who has all the talent in the world, this we know, and somebody that apparently, from all of the reports I have heard, Jim Harbaugh thinks the world of and thinks is one of the best young quarterbacks in the National Football League. The one thing Herbert hasn't done is win. He has the yards, he has the rookie records, he has the franchise records for the Chargers, but they're coming off of a 5-12 season. They have one playoff appearance, and they were leading that game 27-0 and end up losing. That is not what this franchise has been expected to do with the talent that they have had. Now my question is, because of the success that we know that he's had in turning around organizations and teams so quickly, do you think it will be immediate? Because in my mind, I almost feel as if I would be more surprised if the Chargers didn't have success this year than if they did.
No, well, here's the thing, right? And I wrote, and people don't understand this, but and they continue to go down this stupid road about, the quarterback wins the games. Well, Herbert's not the reason they lost games. The fact they had no toughness, mental or physical. Yeah. They had no ability to handle those tough situations, and that's why they lost so many close games. And when you look at, they hired a defensive coach whose defense never played good the 3 years he was there. So, let's understand why they won and why they lost. Harbaugh's going to be really good for them because they're not going to go into the game and say, hey, Justin, win the game for us. The team's going to go win the game. And if they get behind, he'll get them to catch up. If they need to win the game, they'll win it. I mean, look, Jared Goff is working in a situation that suits him. It's not him winning, it's the team winning. And it's the same thing that's going to happen because the Lions have mental toughness. They have physical toughness. And this is what the Chargers will have moving forward. So this is really the right hire for the Chargers at the right time. They need them.
I think so, too.
They need them.
And Michael, I, too, am a little bit biased as a 49ers fan. I loved what Jim Harbaugh brought to the San Francisco 49ers while he was there. You think about that team, that their best season in the 8 years prior to Jim joining the team was an 8-8 season. They were sub 500 for nearly a decade, struggling to do anything well. They were 6-10 the season that Singletary got fired. Harbaugh steps in, they're 13-3 and make it to an NFC championship game. They lose in overtime to the Giants. The next year, they're playing in a Super Bowl. The next year, they're in an NFC championship again. So what he was able to do with an Alex Smith at quarterback. You look at the other stops that he's had. It's not like, aside from Andrew Luck at Stanford, he's had outstanding quarterback play. He's had to mold those players to be great for what he does. And now he's going to have that solid quarterback. And now the only question for me is, what are they going to do with the cap? Because the dollars and cents of it all, that's going to be a challenge moving forward.
Right. But the reason you hire Harbaugh is because you want to develop young players.
Yeah.
He's back at Michigan again, right? So he's the architect of the team. They're going to have to draft players well. They're going to have to play young players. and they're going to have to get something out of the young players, and he'll do that. I mean, I think there's no question. It's like what you just said there when he took over for Singletary and he turned the team around. You know, he made some of those players that nobody thought were good, turned them into really good. Same thing with D'Amico Ryans did down in Houston, right? We all talked about, well, they're not a very good team. Well, all of a sudden they got good. How'd that happen? Well, the coach makes you better, right? Great players make other players better. Great coaches make teams better. I think that's what you're going to see here. So, to me, it's really the best hire, right? And, you know, and now you're going to have to really do a good job of finding the young players. They're going to get rid of some of their cap hits, some of the older players that aren't playing well, and they're going to rebuild this thing. But it's not going to take very long because they have the starting point that you need. They have a left tackle in Slater. They've got a quarterback. You know, they've got 2 receivers under contract, whether they bring Keenan Allen back or not at that number. They got Mike Williams. They'll be fine.
Currently projected to be about $28 million over the cap. Speaking of money, we know the Spanos family hasn't typically invested a lot in the coaching position, right? But we know Jim's getting paid here. He turned down an offer to return to Michigan to be the highest paid head coach in all of college football right now. So how important was it for the Chargers and for fans of this team to know that LA stepped up when they needed to, right, and that like their team is on the right path?
Well, I think if you're the Spanos family, it's an investment you have to make. It's got residual long-term benefits, right? So, you know, when the league hired Bill Parcells, when the New England Patriots were there, they were in limbo. They were going from Victor Kiam, the shaving magnate, to they put James Orthwine, the Budweiser family member, and they kind of transitioned the team there. But they hired Parcells to be the coach, which upped the brand, which gave the team really more value. And then, of course, Robert Kraft came in and bought the team. So this is the similar situation. It's really enhanced the value. And if your cap, let's say your cap is $220 million, and you're paying 10% of your cap to the guy who's running the team, that's $25 million, right? Like that's not, you're not, you know, that's probably the right thing to do. If you're paying your quarterback $50 million and you're paying your coach $20, he's got more impact on everything than what the player does. So, like, people get caught up in the money. When you're getting a proven winner, a guy who's 71% winning percentage, you better pay for it.
And again, to confirm that, as a collegiate head coach, 144-42 with the 49ers. He was 44-19-1. And Warren Sharp put this out in 2011 when he took over. The 49ers season win total was 7.5. They went 13-3 that year. 2012 set the win total at 10. 11-5 go to the Super Bowl. 2013 win total set at 11.5. They won 12, and of course lose that heartbreaker to Seattle in the NFC Championship game. So, yes, continues to exceed expectations. The Chargers then, in terms of like odds, from an odds perspective, they go from 30-1 immediately to 25-1. So that got cut down a little bit for the 2025 Super Bowl odds. What's next for Michigan? They go from 12-1 to 14-1. The expectation is that offensive coordinator Sharon Moore is going to get that job. Reports saying that he's got meeting with Michigan officials today, and the expectation is he's going to walk out of that meeting as the head coach of the Michigan Wolverines. Yep.
I mean, they got a chance to watch him for 2 years, for really 2 years. They got a chance to watch him as a head coach. I mean, I'm sure he can go with Jim if he wants, but this is his moment to be the head coach at Michigan. He needs to do it, and I thought he was tremendously loyal. His honor and respect towards Jim when he took over. And look, if they want to keep their program together and they don't want to lose the commits that they've had to Michigan, right? Because remember, Michigan's one of those schools where kids go to see the uniform. I say this all the time. You know, the Michigan-Ohio State game in the year 2050 is sold out, and the kids are going to play in the game aren't even born yet. Kids go to Michigan for the uniform. Kids go to Ohio State for the uniform, right? They go to Alabama for the uniform. There's certain Penn State, right? There's certain places that are uniform-driven with their tradition and their history. And I think Moore can enhance that and keep his recruiting class in place. It's a seamless transition. Now, I think there's a rule in Michigan in state employees' hirings. It takes 7 days to hire them. But it makes total sense to, after you've watched him coach, fill in for a great coach to move him up in the program.
Yeah, and you're already seeing players come out on Twitter saying it's no question Sharon Moore is the guy. That's what it seems that everybody wants. And for Jim Harbaugh, once again, despite some of the controversy and adversity that they faced off the field, he's walking away from Michigan, bringing them their first national championship since 1997. And there's not like the oh man, Jim's leaving. It's not terrible from that standpoint. Like, he's moving on. It's the right thing for him at this point, and Michigan has been reestablished as a prominent program, once again having success. So I think it's a win-win for a lot of people involved.
Right. Also, I think it's a win-win because he didn't try to hide that he was pretending he's staying and he's not staying.
Like, if he were to go to the Vikings, if he were to go to the Vikings a couple years ago, I think that would have been a bad taste in people's mouths, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think to me, when you're honest and you're up front, look, the college terrain is tough. I mean, if college didn't have NIL and they didn't have all this stuff going on, I think Nick Saban probably coaches 4 more years. But there's so much going on now, that it's really become a more difficult job than even the NFL.
And to your point about that, with Harbaugh now going back to the NFL, Saban retiring, and Kalen DeBoer going to Alabama, 3 of the 4 coaches that were in the college football playoff have left their schools, including the 2 that were in the title game. And as Matt Fortuna pointed out, in the 26-year history of the BCS and CFP era, there's never been an instance of a single head coach leaving the offseason after making either of those fields. So historic that 3 of the 4, only Sark remaining at Texas, is stable. We've got plenty more to cover. We've got a new head man in Carolina as well to discuss, and what is going on with Bill Belichick and the Falcons. Stay with us on the Lombardi Line. Now, we talked earlier about Jim Harbaugh to the Chargers. There was also some breaking news in the last hour that Dave Canales will be the new head coach for the Carolina Panthers, former Bucs offensive coordinator, Michael. And while pen has not been put to paper just yet, Adam Schefter saying it will get done. What was your initial reaction when you heard the news?
Well, I mean, look, I don't know if you could ever say you're surprised by anything that occurs in the NFL. You just had Mike Vrabel in, and you immediately hired Dave Canales. But, look, you got Dan Morgan, the president of your team, who was involved in every decision that was involved last time. So, I mean, it is what it is. And Dave Canales' claim, and I think he deserves credit for this, is they watched Baker Mayfield play this year, and they probably said to themselves, we couldn't get Baker to play that good. How did this guy get him to play that good? Well, they had Mike Evans, they had Chris Godwin, but Baker didn't play all that good the entire year if you paid attention, right? There were moments where Baker was really bad, but he wasn't as bad as he was for Carolina. So I think that helped, and Morgan was with him in Seattle, whether they're tight friends or not. There's that familiarity. I don't understand how he was in Seattle for as long as he was, and they kept hiring offensive coaches over him and not him. And that doesn't mean he's not good. That just means he got overlooked in Seattle. Mm-hmm. But I think to me, this is, you got Mike Vrabel in the building, you got Bill Belichick, you got Pete Carroll, and you're David Tepper. You're one of the richest men in the world. You have a legacy of unbelievable respect in the hedge fund business. And this is what you're doing? Like, I don't get it. I really don't. I don't get it. And I hope I hope Morgan's the right guy. Yeah. I hope he is. But I don't know how you could sit there and say he is after every decision you just fired the last GM for he was involved with.
Yeah, so here's my thing, Michael, with Canales, and I have no problem with Canales. What he did this season with the Bucs, to your point, and Baker Mayfield was great, and I know that he is respected as a good young offensive mind, all these things. But I just look at the GM hire first and foremost being Dan Morgan, and exactly what you just said about their connection with Seattle. And is it just this guy hiring his buddy? And I know that when you go back throughout the NFL, and a lot of these jobs you want to hire people you're familiar with and you like their work and that you do have those relationships with. But all I know of Dan Morgan to this point is that he was the right-hand man sitting next to Fitterer while he was making all of these decisions that were not going over well. And now he's hiring somebody that he has a personal relationship with. And there are other really, really good coaching candidates out there that I'm confused how they haven't been spoken to, including Bill Belichick.
Right. I mean, they didn't even talk to him. They didn't call, they brought Vrabel and they didn't even call Pete Carroll, and to me, it just shows.
Well, Vrabel was supposed to do his second interview today, but obviously that's not happening.
I didn't even know he had a first interview at Carolina.
Or maybe it was his first.
I think that was his first. Maybe it was his first. Yeah. I think that was his first, yeah. But, Dan Morgan's, he's running all football Look, this is, to me, I keep asking myself this, like, how is Dan Morgan going to interview Mike Vrabel? Like, evaluate the evaluator. Like, you put 2 people in a room with football knowledge from a coaching player personnel standpoint, and then you bring somebody in without that complete knowledge, the interviewer can't make a good decision. I mean, it's really evaluate the evaluator. Like, I think to me, it just shows you they would rather take less than have the best. And I think you'll see that around the league. I mean, the structure in Tennessee has proven over time immemorial to never work. Giving a president all the authority over the coaches and the coach kind of just calling plays. When does that work? Tell me when that works.
It doesn't.
And don't even put personalities in it. Like, when does that work, right? Well, work with Sean McVay when he went out there. Sean McVay kind of was running some of the stuff. He got him to go, got the quarterback to play good. Sean McVay's a different person than a lot of these other guys. But, look, it is what it is.
And, I mean, all of the headlines that we're even seeing about this hiring are in a surprise, in a stunner, the dark horse candidate. Like, it's okay.
You should see my texts are from coaches in the league complaining about, like, what is going on? Like, there used to have to be merit to get a job, right? You used to have to go through hoops. And I don't want to sound like an old fart because that's not it. I understand this is a new wave. But when you're a one-time coordinator and you become a head coach, it's a little unfair to the Raheem Morrises and the other guys who have been doing this for a long time, right? It's really unfair. But, that's the way the league is. They are protecting their desk, right? They're protecting their desk. They don't want to hire somebody who's going to upset the apple cart. And they're under this illusion that if they hire a great offensive coach, he's going to make the quarterback better.
Well, let's see what ultimately ends up happening with his connection with Bryce Young, what they're able to bring in around him, because obviously, because of the trade that they made last year, they don't have that top pick like they would have, despite having the 2-win season this year. But let's push it forward to another coaching opportunity, because I mentioned Bill Belichick, and apparently the only team that he has interviewed with is the Atlanta Falcons, who Adam Schefter said on Get Up this morning may not be the favorite to be the head coach in Atlanta after the odds boards on DraftKings are telling us he was a $4 favorite at this point. People, according to Schefter, are calling the search for the Falcons head coach still wide open. What's going on here?
Well, I think it's pretty clear. I mean, there is a strong, and Bill Simmons reported this on his podcast. There's a strong contingency that in Atlanta, that if they brought Belichick in, Rich McKay, who's now the president and has a huge role within the player in the whole organization, would have to move to Arthur Blank's business enterprises. And so do you think he really wants to do that? Do you think he really does? And Terry Fontenot's voice might be drowned out. So a lot of these conversations that are coming out, I'm not accusing anybody of leaking anything, but I've seen Operation Mockingbird work in the CIA, so I know how this stuff goes. And so that's where we're getting it. And look, they have every right to. If they can convince Arthur Blank that they're better off hiring Raheem Morris as their head coach and keeping Terry Fontenot as their general manager and Rich McKay, the king of all football operations, if they believe that, then they deserve it. Then that's what they should do. You can't make people hire somebody. You can't make people smarter. But on a logical sense, if I said to you, Stormy, you could hire Bill Belichick and you wouldn't have Rich McKay and Terry Fontenot and Ryan Pace, or you'll hire Raheem Morris and you keep everything intact and Rich McKay is the voice of the organization, what are you choosing?
I mean, clearly you fired your head coach because it's not working. How are you not choosing Belichick? I thought Belichick was going to be the belle of the ball in this coaching search, and now we've got 5 vacancies that are now filled, only 3 open, and the place that we thought he was destined to go is all of a sudden up in the air, and you've got Ben Johnson, who I know you've said seems to be the guy for the Washington Commanders. Boomer Esiason has reported it's all but a done deal. It's a lock that he's going to end up there.
I mean, they're not even pretending they're interested in anybody. They got Ben Johnson. I mean, I think that's pretty clear.
But then
they
there's
know
Seattle.
Ben's going to say yes. And here's the thing too, why we know it. Carolina wanted Ben. Right. Carolina wanted Ben Johnson, and they couldn't get him. So to me, really, we're only down to 2 jobs: Seattle and Atlanta.
And so Seattle, I know Dan Quinn has an in-person with the Seahawks today, but they haven't obviously talked to Bill Belichick either, because Atlanta's been the only spot that he's been in these deep conversations with. So does Bill Belichick end up being an odd man out this coaching cycle? Does he end up not having a job?
You would. I mean, if he doesn't get Atlanta, if
how crazy
Atlanta,
is that?
Well, I mean, then what it tells you is nobody wants to win. Nobody's really. Is Atlanta trying to win? I mean, nobody's asking that question that I just asked you. Would you rather have Rich McKay running your football operation, and Terry Fontenot being your general manager and pick a coach, anybody, it would be Raheem Morris because that's who Rich McKay wants. It would be Raheem Morris, who I think is a great coach. Would you be better off in that scenario, or would you be better off handling the store to Belichick? One guy's got 6 Super Bowls, been to 9, has proven to be a successful coach. He's going in the Hall of Fame. Meanwhile, all the other guys on the other side are not even going to go close to the Hall of Fame. The only time they're going to the Hall of Fame is when they buy a ticket to get into Canton. That's it. So, stop trying. I tell all my friends around the league, stop trying to use logic in an illogical world. The logic is simply this: people protect their desk. And so for us as a betting network and bettors, we can make a lot of money on the incompetence of people running these teams.
And that's
we should embrace it. We're enjoying it.
There we go.
Keep going. You don't think I'm going to be able to watch the Tennessee. And I love Brian Callahan. I love Bill, his dad, Valerie, the mom. I've been with them. I hope they're successful. But I know how that program, it's going to go. I know how it's going to go. I know how it's going to go in Tampa. So, in
Atlanta.
In Carolina.
Oh, yeah.
There's variance here. We are we're buying companies, and we're evaluating the leadership team before you buy the company. That's what most people do. That's what Warren Buffett does. And so as bettors, we're going to make a fortune off this.
Well, does this not, too, feel like it's got a lot of parallels to when Tom Brady was available and
it sure does.
Nobody else seemed to want him for some reason? What did he do, by the way, when he landed with the Bucs? Won a
or
Super
Sean
Bowl.
Payton last year.
Exactly.
Sean Payton had one suitor last year.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.